BP Gurús y The Service Desk Institute presentan la Semana de la Evolución de TI, transformando la industria. Un evento único que fusiona las conferencias digitales líderes en la industria de IT Service Management y Service Desk en Latinoamérica y es presentado por sponsors de primer nivel que transforman la manera en la que evoluciona el sector. Semana de la Evolución de TI. Comenzamos. Beran tiene más de 20 años de experiencia en gestión de servicios y atención al cliente. Se ha desempeñado en varios roles de la mesa de servicio como consultor y en diseño de experiencia. Sus clientes incluyen corporaciones globales y medianas empresas que trabajan en diversas industrias. Conocido por desafiar las normas de la industria, los consejos prácticos y los enfoques únicos para la gestión de servicios. Actualmente se desempeña como analista de la industria de TI en Ingate. También es presentador de Ticket Volume, un podcast semanal sobre tecnologías de la información, y es un orador de gran prestigio en conferencias y eventos de networking. Sus temas favoritos presentan nuevas formas de pensar sobre las experiencias de servicio y mejorar la colaboración en equipo.
Hello and welcome. Thanks for being here today and taking the time to explore a topic that I am highly passionate about. If you have visual or hearing needs, I've placed a QR code for the slides here and at the end of the presentation. Feel free to grab that now if you need it. Co-creation of value is one of the newest concepts in ITIL v4, and in many other frameworks and methods, involving users in the process of building services and products is not so new. Have you ever built something from scratch? Something that didn't exist? No recipe, no instructions, like you're the first person to build it ever, an inventor. How can a person do this with no experience, no experts or lessons to guide them in the build? More importantly, how can a whole team of people do this and agree on how it should be built? I'm Beran, and I build service management products and services. Last year, all the way back in 2021, I was assigned to an HR portal project. This client was building an employee portal that would be used by over 28,000 employees and contractors for a $14 billion retail company. Their current portal had complaints and really wasn't providing the value that employees and HR staff needed. Complaints like, each brand has its own look and feel. It feels very disjointed. I use the portal, but then I had to call anyway. I have to train each employee how to use the HR portal. And the number to call when you're sick isn't in there anywhere. And this was the portal. It's not half bad. There's prominent search, there's good branding, lots of color, and those are real employees up at the top there, which they clearly value. But how many times have you gone to an HR portal to explore resources? We're not mining for gold here. I just need our policies. And how many labels do we need for people to understand that these are links? There's a ton of opportunity here. From those examples to also, there weren't enough ways to just navigate and explore and connect to HR through this portal. And that lack of navigation really hurts the usability of any application. And so HR went to IT to get their portal rebuilt. The problem is that IT and HR already built this one. So they didn't know how, or they already would have. So they hired us to design it, which is so much fun. We get to make people's lives better. We get to help them maximize their benefits from HR. and we get to build something sexy. Fun job, right? But this blank white screen is where so many teams get stuck. They either don't know what needs to be built, or they build something and it doesn't work like they need it to, and we don't know how to make it work like we need it to. So people take a lot of different routes from here. Some will buy something pre-built, a template. Some will look at examples and what others have done and try to mimic or copy them. The problem was that this team just did that and it didn't work. So they were ready to get it done right, and they were ready to get it done quickly. They were trying to get out of a blank slate paralysis, when people lack both the expertise and the information needed to make the right decisions. So we suggested user research. We wanted to inform our designs and inform our decisions. We wanted to speak with and watch users interact with HR and understand what they like and what they dislike, and start exploring how to digitize that. And just like most of our clients, they completely declined. I used to never really understand why people avoided user research. I wondered what stops people from wanting to build something that their users want. And what I realized is that people have been seriously burned by research. Some people believe that research is going to waste people's time. Like they're imagining executives listening to employees about how they work, or that it's going to waste people's money. There may be a perception that research is expensive, or they got ripped off before. People sometimes fear that they're going to look insincere or stupid or disconnected because they're supposed to already know the answers to these questions, and that'll make them look bad, which is similar. Well, like I should know these answers. People are also afraid that it'll cause delays. Valid fear. I'm sure a lot of projects have been put on hold to conduct research. And people are also afraid that research will not come to any actual conclusions because users are stupid. And many of these are valid fears. However, that last one is wrong. Users are not stupid. They're just like you and I. They just don't understand themselves very well. User research is the discipline of learning about users' needs and thought processes by studying how they perform tasks, observing how they interact with a product, or by using other data-driven strategies. It's using analytics to capture user behaviors and other measurements to understand how to best serve their needs and meet your objectives, whether that's your user's objective, your team's goals, or your whole organization's mission. Research, executed properly, can really extract some major insights into what needs to be changed and where people are stuck, which really isn't that tough. But my point, though, is that research doesn't have to be a waste of time, nor does it have to be expensive. Let me prove it to you. So here's the pitch. To convince our client, we offered to conduct some informal employee interviews free of charge to see what kind of information we could discover. We asked for 5 people for 30 minutes. So let's look at some of the results. People want a portal that is easy to use. This is not the kind of insight you can expect from good research. Yet so many people think that this is the outcome. Here's the actual insight we gained. My team doesn't have computers, so we're not going to be able to use the portal. And this is the kind of insight that projects need. And teams who don't do any research may never discover this simple insight waiting to be shared and waiting to be learned. User research will teach you about the constraints and limitations of your users. Here's another one. People like nice looking applications. This is another fake result, of course, because you cannot simply ask, do you like good looking applications? The answer is going to be yes all the time. Research is an art form. It's a way of walking around a question. It's a way to get the answer without asking the question at all. Here's another. Agent pay is cut for doing anything other than taking calls on their computer. Research will uncover not only the technical limitations, but also existing process limitations and adjacent constraints. As it turns out, customer service contractors use Citrix, and their every click and action on that computer is tracked and measured. Agents must take calls as soon as their shift starts or they're docked pay. Using HR during contracted hours will literally lower their paycheck. People would like an easy way to get in touch with their HR representative. I guess if you conduct poor research, you can expect poor results. This is another fake response, of course, but wait until you see the real insight. I'm not going to ask my team to put in self-service tickets with HR because that's what I do. I take care of their HR problems and make them happy. That's what I love about being a people manager. What powerful insight. HR would have never gotten this kind of information by conducting these interviews. Would Terry have actually shared this with HR? I doubt it. But our researchers built trust with Terry, and as a third party, he trusted us to understand his value to his team and his value to the organization and represent that fairly to the project team. So needless to say, these results were enough to convince our client. The value of these insights was just too shocking, so they were sold on user research. So we developed a cross-functional team of change champions to leverage throughout the project, which was perfect because it didn't take very long for us to hit our first roadblock. For context, on these internal employee portals, there are basically two user interface patterns. One is to search and find what you need, and the other is to browse around in categories and knowledge and forms and figure out what you can get out of HR. Let me show you on a wireframe. When you're wireframing, you're kind of like doodling what a product or service will look like or be like. In this example, we're starting to visualize what these pages will have on them, where the buttons will be, what navigation elements, content will exist, where they'll be on the page. And this helps facilitate the teamwork toward a finished product. So you might have 10 of these wireframes for each of the pages on your portal. Once the rough areas are mapped out and people start to agree on the general layouts, designers will start to add fidelity or resolution. They're going to add additional details to build up a realistic prototype. And as we're adding fidelity and details, we realize that we don't know what these categories are. When people click on knowledge categories to drill into what's there, what should they be called? And what icons should be used to represent those categories? And this is a detail in UX and UI that is super important. Where should the payroll stuff be? And what should we call it? Compensation? Pay and benefits? Payroll? This seemingly minor decision can make or break a usability study or even a product. If you get the categories here wrong, you're going to watch users flail and flounder as they try to navigate and explore resources. So to help identify the information architecture, the taxonomy, and the categories, we went to our change champions. Now, practice designers know that just asking those change champions what the categories should be would deliver terrible results. We needed a way to get unbiased answers for how people sort out the various aspects of HR. So we decided to run an open card sort activity. So let's walk through it. A card sort is a great way to get your users to design your information structure and capture their mental models without too much effort and without too much bias. Participants are given a set of cards. Each card has one thing on it. You set these cards in front of your users and ask them to group them. Here you can see one participant's opinion. Grouping food. and another user's opinion to sort them slightly differently. Next, we give participants a blank Post-it to label each of those groups with a name that makes sense to them. Predictably, the names of these categories match their color, and the other using their food group names. Of course, both these examples have some issues. Some people call tomatoes a fruit. Some people claim that bananas are white on the inside. What about eggs? I mean, they're kind of clear, but white, but yellow. It doesn't matter because we weren't actually doing food. But what this activity does is it indirectly guides participants to group items in ways that make sense to them logically, and then name those groups with words that make sense to them too. And oftentimes the results, the most logical, the most simple result is often the best result. Now, like I said, we're not grouping food here. This isn't going to help us at all. We actually took our cards were printed off HR policy names, HR services, knowledge-based titles, and common requests that people make of HR. So our participants were going to group our HR knowledge for us. And if you're thinking there's a lot of different ways to sort that stuff, you are right. But there are trends and patterns that appear. So here are some of the results being presented during analysis. This here is an example of a prioritization matrix, which can help identify similarly grouped items, like this group that I've zoomed in here, that seems to all be related to employee performance. So talent review and succession planning should be in the same category as those other darker entries. So then we can look at the individual categorization and look manually for trends as well. Here are the categories that people put that same talent review knowledge article into. And a quick glance on the right there, you can see those categories. A quick glance shows that there's a trend. One word is used way more than all the others. And I love this example because although only 2 users use the same name, you can tell from all the results that performance will likely get most of our people to the right spot. Here are 2 more examples where the category users picked was pretty obvious. You can see we're obviously going to have a benefits category and a travel category. And here's another example where the research was way less conclusive. And where does that hiring employee guide belong? Is it for hiring? Is it for managers? So we took these results and came up with what we thought would work for a majority of employees. And this is the result. Here you can see some of the categories that our results led us to, and not all of these were even suggested by user research. For example, team member management wasn't suggested by any user, but after testing the managers, we realized that there were a ton of services and policies and processes related to the employee lifecycle. It needed its own category. And you can see we didn't just choose performance, we did career performance, because it really made people realize that this is not about my performance individually, but my performance to HR. This took 1 week of research. Only 1 week. Only 1 week of waiting for participants to complete the card sort. And then after we got the results back, it only took 1 day for us to analyze and mock up a prototype, a simulation of the portal that we could test with real users doing real tasks. So how is this better? We tested this prototype with another set of participants, people who didn't do the card sort. And then we assigned them to tasks like find the work from home policy or request time off for a new baby. And then we watched them use the portal. And here's the bottom half of the page so you can see a bit more. Hopefully you can see all the different ways we let people explore and discover HR services and information. But the best part is that this actually worked. We ran a simulation on the old portal and tested search times and reading times on policy, and then compared it to the new portal. And these were our results. Not only were people able to find what they wanted They got there faster. They could read through the results to find their answer in under half the time. And our rewritten knowledge articles greatly reduced the time to understand policy. This was another adjustment we made based on user research. We knew we needed simple to read and understandable policies instead of a bunch of legal talk. And these efforts really paid off. They paid off in reducing complexity and reducing the number of calls to HR ops teams. People could understand the policy so they didn't have to ask questions. And how do you think people felt about the new HR portal? Of course, they loved it. They built it. They helped us write the knowledge articles and update the policies to be readable. They chose the categories and the locations of things on the portal. They chose the navigation elements, the colors, the pictures, everything. And this is what co-creation is all about. It's not about giving all the power to your users. It's not about wasting time and money on research. Co-creation means that we succeed together. It means that we fail together. Imagine how you could use the design cycle to build new processes or improve your existing services. Or maybe this is something you want to leverage internally. How do your teams feel about your change management process? The design cycle is a great tool to use to explore problems. So pick it up and start using it to improve and prioritize work. And when I'm talking to companies about this recently, I also recommend involving your users now to start adapting to this new model, because it does take practice. You're not going to get results right away, and you're not going to get good at it right away. It takes a while to start delivering positive results, just like Agile, just like Lean, and other ways of working. And card sorts are just the tip of the iceberg. They're just one very obvious example of a design activity you can use to research people. There's interviews, there's field observation, usability testing, work diaries, and many, many other ceremonies and artifacts to help guide processes and lead teams towards success. But this is the overall value of co-creation. It builds products and services that meet expectations and follow existing patterns and trends. As a result, go lives are simpler. Adoption increases, and this starts to blur the lines between project teams and those whom the projects serve. So, if you're stuck with your enterprise service management program or just designing projects, products, and services, I can help you get unstuck. Reach out and connect. I hope to meet you. The slides and images from this presentation, along with more details like what tools we used and some templates, are available in that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. Click on co-creation once you get there. I also host a podcast called Ticket Volume, where we explore these topics and have guests and experts on to discuss things like this and other service management topics. Consider subscribing. And feel free to reach out to me directly. I love connecting with people and solving problems. Matt@ticketvolume.com. Finally, I hope that you found this topic interesting and my presentation well done. And let's open it up for some questions if there's some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Matt. Interesting topic. Let's wait for the audience to start writing them. Ok, entonces, por favor, gente, empecemos a generar las preguntas. Es un tema muy interesante. Vamos a empezar con la ronda de preguntas y respuestas. Yo las voy a leer en español, no se preocupen. Si las quieren poner en inglés, adelante. También se las podemos hacer llegar. Yo voy a hacer la interlocución en español y la interpretación se encargará de hacérselas llegar a Matt, ¿de acuerdo? Cualquier cosa que necesiten, por favor, también está el chat y podemos empezar con las preguntas. Entonces, Lilia Minchan nos pregunta, ¿cómo podemos hacer las correcciones en una investigación que está corriendo, que está actualmente llevándose a cabo?
Yes. Yeah, like I said, great question, Lilia. How do you actually perform the correct research is a great question. And I think I mentioned it. I gave good credit to your question by saying that research is an art form. It really does take a lot of practice, and you kind of need to fail every once in a while. It's also something that doesn't stop. I think in a lot of organizations, it's new to be thinking about things this way. So a lot of times the use of research hits a wall and then it just isn't conducted anymore. Much better is to have research ongoing all the time so that you know, number one, what is our primary question that we need answered? That's the first and most important thing. And then once you understand that, then you adapt your research around that. So your living research can change slightly if you're not getting that one question answered. That's just one tip of many. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I would love to answer this question in much more detail.
Muchísimas gracias, Matt. Siguiente pregunta. ¿Cuáles son las variables que deberíamos de considerar en una investigación?
Yes. Well, always start with making sure that you understand your audience. So you want to understand who you're serving and then what sort of categories they fall into. You know, if you're in a manufacturing organization, you'll have people in production and warehouse and shipping and facilities. And just knowing those different groups is going to help you really understand the different variables you're going to have to encounter when you're conducting an investigation. And I should also note that you will be surprised and you will have to pivot because that is the point of research. There's going to be things in there that we just didn't know existed or didn't know were a problem, and they will either delight us and will help answer and fix them, or they will shock us and scare us, and we need to adjust our research. But both should be informative, and the research results should be shared broadly across the project team, so everyone can be just as shocked as you are.
Alberto Ramos, desde la República Dominicana, nos comenta que le gustó mucho la expresión de co-creación, ¿no? Que nos importe de igual manera tanto el éxito como el fracaso de los demás. Le gustó mucho esa expresión y bueno, te agradece por ello. Tenemos aquí otra pregunta de Roberto Linares. Algunos clientes tienen la idea de do not ask to me, no me preguntes, yo no sé, ¿no? Y eso es lo que yo estoy pagando para hacer mi trabajo. ¿Cómo podemos justificar el beneficio de la co-creación en términos económicos de inversión?
The first thing to point out is any projects that have failed recently, because those wounds are going to be fresh. And I was part of a project once. It was a $3 million project that got scrapped right at the end. And it was because we didn't conduct the right research, really. And so that really, like, those are the lessons that really help people understand that this seems like an investment in waste, but really it's an investment in ensuring success. So if you have any of those failure stories to use as leverage, that's one of the best ways to get funding for it and time for it. And I think the first part of your question was really interesting to me because you know, they have this idea, don't ask me, I don't know, that's why I'm paying you, you have to do this stuff. And designers, although they may be multidisciplined and have a broad set of skills and experience, your unique situation is going to be different. So for example, these categories that I kept referencing in today's presentation, we did take those and we took them to other HR clients, you know, and we definitely use them as like a basis, like, hey, these are really good categories. They're based in research. And it makes sense that we could take that and apply it to other clients that kind of fit the mold. But you also find that there are these microcosms where they just talk differently about something, or they use different phrasing, or it isn't a culture fit. So those really are the situations where you need to kind of break the mold and conduct more research, conduct more familiarity with the users, and get the answers you need. I hope that helps. But if not, connect on LinkedIn.
Muchas gracias, Matt. Una pregunta más que tenemos por aquí. ¿Podrías recomendar algunos libros para desarrollar la habilidad de hacer una investigación más eficiente?
Do you see me? I'm leaning over to my book stack over here. Lean UX is a really good one. It's very general to all of design thinking. There is a book that I use called 101 Design Methods. That's really good for just picking out activities and exercises that I'm going to use. And then there's one more called This is Design Doing. And that is a great book at also giving you those exercises, like how do we pretend that we're the user? How do we do this play with the user and pretend like they're using our product to kind of understand how they're using it, that sort of thing. So those are three that I really like. For user research specific, I follow some people on Twitter that are really useful for that. And I don't have any listed at the top of my mind right now, but connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll send you their names so you can also connect with them. I know that they've got books too, so. More on that. Thank you for the great questions, y'all.
Encantados, tenemos mucha hambre, mucha necesidad de poder hacernos amigos, sobre todo del fracaso en la investigación. Y tenemos ahí también unas preguntas de, tú que ya lo has vivido, que has estado de frente en asimilar y abrazar el fracaso, ¿cuáles serían tus recomendaciones para que lo podamos empezar a practicar?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to start doing the research and it's completely greenfield, you've never done it before, you've never even like considered doing it before, start easy, start small. I recommend just like the previous answer, focus on one question that you're trying to answer. You can do interviews like we did in this presentation, but they're really going to be open-ended. You're going to find a lot, probably more than you ever wanted to know. But one thing you can do is just dip your toes in. You know, start an interview. Get one of your most vocal users, befriend them, and just start listening to them. That really is the key, actually, when it comes to research, is to have a good question so that you know what you're trying to learn and that you'll get a good answer out of it. And then ask it to people and listen to their answer. Be a good, active listener. Don't respond. We are very good architects and solution engineers. We almost always have a solution to every problem people encounter, but you're not supposed to respond. You're just supposed to listen and observe and comprehend what their concerns are and be empathetic to them. And then you'll start to see patterns. You'll connect with multiple people and, you know, maybe they'll all say the same thing in regards to your question. It is a luxury, but I also recommend using someone else to do the research, especially if it's like research about something you do, because you aren't going to be great at writing questions. And I am a victim of this as well. I have written poor research questions many times before because I was too close to the process. I was too close to the work. I needed someone else to actually ask these questions so that they could ask them in an open-ended way and actually actively listen to the answer instead of trying to solve it. So that's really like the start. And then from there, I would take a look at one of those other books that I mentioned earlier, or that I'm going to throw out on LinkedIn later, and just look at other ways to do it, because interviews, although useful, will only get you so far, to a certain point where you need to know more. You need to know how multiple people are working together, or people aren't aware of their own actions. So then, maybe you need to use Google Analytics and some heat maps to see where people are clicking on your different systems and tools. And that can help you sort of start to research and understand people. So you can start with interviews. You can start with the data you already have in tickets and in change requests and in CRM systems like Salesforce or whatever you use. You can start with that because you already have a ton of user research. It's the text that people type into tickets. It's the emails they send you. It's just a matter of how do we actually get use out of it? How do we get power out of it? And that's where a really good researcher and a really good business analyst come in handy.
Muchas gracias, Matt. Vamos a avanzar un poquito más allá de la literatura, más allá de la bibliografía que nos has compartido. Vámonos hacia lo táctico, vámonos a los métodos. ¿Existe algún método en específico que tenga alguna ventaja, o existen cuáles son los métodos que tenemos, o si podemos seguir el método científico? ¿Qué nos recomendarías a nivel táctico para que podamos empezar a aplicar las investigaciones?
Yes. And I tried to keep that out of this presentation specifically because it's boring, and you can Google it and you can find it and you can take training. It really is the design lifecycle. And the design lifecycle is very simple. There are basically 4 steps: research, analyze, prototype, review. And that way you're able to quickly go from understanding what's needed, simulating and testing it, to building it, and then reflecting on it. And that is really the best method. And how you apply it and how fast you go depends on your organization. I can say that it's really easy to, just start incorporating the design lifecycle. But really, if you're going to, it's got to be on a project. It almost always has to be on a project, either an improvement initiative of some kind, or a new service or product that's being built, or even an existing product or service that's being changed. Leveraging the design lifecycle will give you more success. It will give you more success along the way in iterative steps, so that you know that you're not making a misstep. For example, all the time when you call customer service, what's the first thing they do? They always ask your name or your employee number. Well, is there a way around that? If we were going to look at our incident management process or our service desk call handling procedures, this is something that I would get a user in right away. Do I know my employee number? Do I want to read it off to the service desk agent? And if we understand how that makes people feel and whether they want to do it or not, we can start to design a really great experience around calling the service desk, where I call the service desk, and instead of them saying, please read off your 3-digit employee ID, it says, hey, Matt, how's sales today? Or how's the podcast going? Or whatever, some sort of personalized support, which is where I believe all of IT is going, is towards that personalized support. So really, the design lifecycle is going to empower you to go to the next level with your organization. It's going to enable you to build those next experiences, those employee experiences that are enjoyable, those customer experiences that are useful, and keep them coming back for more and renewing their contracts. So definitely take some time to explore the design lifecycle. And if that didn't answer it well enough, let me know, or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can discuss further.
Oh, muy buena respuesta. De todas maneras hay que seguir investigando. Como bien dices tú, todo está abierto en Google de cierta manera. Solo hay que poner un poquito de empeño en encontrar lo que es suficiente para nosotros o lo que atiende nuestras necesidades. Hay una pregunta aquí muy orientada al recurso, uno de los recursos más valiosos, que es el tiempo entre investigaciones que tenemos o el inicio de un proyecto y cómo podemos manejar a los clientes que se tardan mucho en dar información, ¿no? La pregunta de Roberto Linares.
Roberto, I think you maybe work for a consulting firm. It sounds like you work for a consulting firm. And I think the key for this, if it is, because you use the word clients, so I'm assuming you're selling to customers. The key for this is to have stop gates. If you've got a time and materials statement of work, then your time doesn't start until they give you the research, or your time doesn't, the timer pauses until they give you the research. And the same thing could go for a non-time and materials or a bill of work statement of work. It would be goal-based specifically. So you can say, like, look, in order for us to reach this goal, we need to have this research by this and this date. And it's altruistic of me to say that we're all on the same team, but those are the best clients. They're the ones that will work with you. They're the ones that won't yell at you for delaying the project when really it's their fault. So it kind of is about avoiding abusive clients, and it's kind of about protecting yourself with contract and timing. So those are my advice.
Maravilloso. Matt, ¿qué software sueles utilizar que te apoye a diseñar procesos de TI que la gente disfruta? ¿Qué herramientas informáticas son buenas para esto?
Yes, great question. The informatic tools, use the tools you already have. I say that I give a presentation on surveys too, and I say the same thing. If a user is putting how they feel in a ticket, don't ask them how they feel. And I would say the same thing for all your systems. Leverage the data that users are already giving to you, and giving to you free of charge. Some of the tools that I've used are on that QR code link, but to simulate processes, if you're going to simulate like an HR portal, we used Adobe XD and Figma to mock that up and build a simulation. And then we used maze.co or MAZE to do some usability testing and watch users use the tool. Another tool that we used for the card sort specifically is called Optimal Workshop, a great designer's tool for running virtual research sessions. They've got lots of different tools that you can leverage. It's a bit spendy, but it's totally worth it. And use the information systems you already have. It's possible that there are gaps and opportunities that you're not thinking about. Things like putting Google Analytics on your ITSM platform, or your service management platform, or your SharePoint site. Putting third-party tools and combining them with your existing tool set to give a more complete picture of what your customers and users are already experiencing. It's similar to just looking through tickets, like, Angie's calling me, Angie's angry. Look at Angie's tickets. Okay, she's had 30 in the last 2 days. Now we know why Angie's angry. It kind of the same thing. What tools are you using already? What information are your users already giving you for free? Use that first, and then if you totally exhaust it, then you're putting in new tools or you're going to the research.
Maravilloso. Vamos a empezar a hacer el cierre. Estamos en muy buen tiempo. Vamos a dar pie a una pregunta más. Matt, ¿qué indicadores debemos tener presentes para identificar que una investigación va en la dirección correcta?
That is a great question. You may not ever know, and that seems totally disheartening. But yeah, if you aren't getting closer to answering your question, and you'll know that pretty early on, or like in the case of these interviews, they were all over the board. One guy was like, one person said, we don't have computers, and another person said, we can't use our computers for this purpose. And so that can feel really distracting and kind of chaotic, those really random problems and answers and issues that your users are experiencing. And sometimes that can feel like you're not going in the right direction. You're not answering your question. You're just coming up with more problems, more gaps, more opportunities. And that's okay, because that does exist in user research, and there are times for that, and that is really great and goes a long way if you're building a journey map or you're building a service blueprint. Those are great things to add to those. But when it comes to research and you're trying to find the answer to the one thing you need to know to build a great product, if you don't see a definitive answer or a trend, switch tactics. Don't be using the same research tactics. And a little investment in usability testing or simulation can go a long way in understanding where you're stuck even. It's common, actually, in software development to have multivariate testing. When your research is inconclusive and you can't make an informed decision, put both of your options out there into production. Maybe not if it's a really important system to you. Maybe you do this in test or some other way, like a segmented group of people. But the idea is to get all of your tries out there and see which one actually produces the best result. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to retain users? Are you trying to get them to use more features? Are you trying to communicate better? Put out your A/B tests and see which one of those actually achieves that goal. It may seem like that's a fantasy or a fairy tale, but it does work. It works very well, especially in controlled tests.
Excelente, Matt. Muchísimas gracias. A nombre de todos nuestros asistentes y del equipo de BP Gurús, agradecemos mucho tu participación, tu experiencia. Por favor, ahí tienen su contacto. Busquen a Matt. Siéntanse en total libertad de seguir haciendo preguntas. Nosotros nos vamos a despedir con esto. Matt, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much. Gracias a todos y buen día.
Muchísimas gracias. Seguimos en la semana de evolución. Nos resta todavía parte del programa el día de hoy y con eso estaremos cerrando. Alberto Ramos, excelente presentación. Muchísimas gracias, Matt. Cuídate mucho, que estén muy bien. Nosotros somos BP Gurús, estamos en la semana de la evolución. Quédense con nosotros.
Semana de la evolución de TI. Transformando la industria. Este webinar fue presentado por Semana de la evolución de TI, transformando la industria.